It all began quietly, without any explosions or warnings. Just a message that appeared in the middle of the night on every major government communication line on Earth. The words were polite, formal, and calm. The Galaxy Council, the most powerful group of alien civilizations known to exist, had finally extended an offer to humanity, a peace agreement. After centuries of wars, environmental collapse, and rebuilding, Earth had finally become united under one World Council. The planet had just begun to heal. The oceans were cleaner, cities were rising again, and humans were once more looking toward the stars, not for escape, but for connection. So when the message came, the people of Earth believed this was the moment they had been waiting for, the chance to join the larger universe. The Council's message was full of hope. They promised free trade between planets, shared science and medicine, and peaceful cooperation between species. Their representatives spoke of friendship, understanding, and unity. Across the world, people celebrated. News channels called it the dawn of a galactic era. Children made drawings of alien friends. For once, the world wasn't thinking about war or greed. It was thinking about peace. But deep inside Earth's military command, not everyone felt that same peace. Some people had seen too many betrayals in history to trust a smiling face. In a quiet underground room beneath the United World headquarters, a small group of military advisors studied the message carefully. Every line, every pause, every diplomatic phrase, something felt wrong. One of them pointed out that the Council had never offered peace to any other new species so quickly. Another noticed that the message avoided any mention of equal rights. It only spoke about cooperation under guidance. That single word, guidance, made their alarms ring. So while politicians were preparing celebrations and media events, the defense network was reactivated behind the scenes. Old satellites were reprogrammed. Silent communication lines were reopened. Ships that were once decommissioned for peacekeeping missions were quietly armed again. No one said it out loud, but everyone in that underground room knew the same truth. Hope is beautiful, but only if you're ready for what hides behind it. Days turned into weeks. The world grew more excited as the day of the Peace Summit drew closer. The Council's fleet sent a grand invitation. Humanity was to send a delegation to the galactic station orbiting a distant blue gas giant. It would be the largest gathering of alien civilizations in history. The United World Council chose their best diplomats, scientists, and peace ambassadors. The media called them the messengers of Earth. They would travel through the stars not with weapons, but with open hands. But even as the preparation continued, small signs began to appear that something wasn't right. One of the unmanned space probes that had been sent to map the route toward the Council's space simply vanished. No signal, no debris, no trace. It was as if it had been swallowed by the darkness. A few days later, another probe disappeared too. When Earth requested an explanation from the Council, their response was simple and strange. Technical error. Nothing to worry about. That answer satisfied the politicians, but not the Defense Command. In another part of the world, an intelligence officer monitoring outer system frequencies detected something unusual, a burst of encrypted signals between Council stations. No one on Earth could decode the message, but one phrase kept repeating. The translation program picked out the same word again and again: containment. When the officer reported it, the information was quietly buried. No one wanted to create fear just days before the Peace Summit, but the whispers had already begun spreading among those in command. Was this truly an invitation to peace or something far more dangerous? Back in the United World Council chambers, the debates grew heated. Some leaders argued that humanity should trust the Council. After all, peace was too rare a gift to question. Others believed the entire offer was a trap. One old commander said something that silenced the room. The Council doesn't fear us because we're weak. They fear what we might become. It was then decided that Earth would accept the peace invitation, but with quiet precautions. The diplomatic fleet would carry advanced scanners, hidden defense shields, and one secret device, a small beacon designed to send a coded pulse back to Earth if anything went wrong. It was disguised as a navigation unit, known only to a few. In public, everything looked perfect. World leaders shook hands. People filled the streets waving blue flags marked with the Earth emblem. Songs of peace echoed in every language. Even the news anchors smiled more than usual. Humanity had never looked so united, but inside the military command room there was no celebration. Just silence and screens filled with tracking data. Dozens of ships labeled as research vessels were moving into deep orbit. A new defense formation called Skyline had been secretly deployed, just beyond Mars's orbit, disguised as a mining fleet. And on the moon, inside a quiet observatory, a team of analysts continued listening to every alien broadcast they could intercept. Each night the signals grew stronger, more structured. The aliens were preparing something too. The Peace Fleet launched a few days later. The departure was televised live. Millions watched as the shining ships rose into the sky, carrying humanity's hopes into the stars. Children cheered. Families waved goodbye. The world believed this was the moment when everything would change for the better. But among the crowd were soldiers who didn't cheer. They stood quietly, knowing they might never see those ships return. One of them whispered to another, "Peace is good, but peace without caution is surrender." Out in the vastness of space, the human ships traveled smoothly. The Council's coordinates led them across a long, bright nebula and into a system that seemed almost magical. Rings of silver lights circling a blue gas giant, and a station so large it seemed like a floating city. The aliens welcomed them warmly, their voices soft and calm, their movements graceful. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The human diplomats smiled and shook hands, or whatever counted as a handshake in alien culture. They were polite, friendly, careful with their words, but their security officers noticed things others ignored: hidden turrets, silent guards, strange energy signatures under the floor. It felt less like a peace gathering and more like a test. Back on Earth, the signals from the fleet continued to reach mission control. At first, everything sounded normal: standard reports, regular check-ins. But then the messages grew shorter. Some transmissions were delayed. Then one night a coded report came through in fragments. "Atmosphere safe, but something off. They're watching us." Then silence. The communication team tried to reconnect, but the signal was gone. They waited, thinking it was just interference. But deep down, everyone knew that something had just shifted. Still, the politicians told the public not to worry. They said it was a technical delay, nothing more. But inside the Defense Command, they prepared for the worst. Orders were sent quietly through secure lines. Every defense unit on standby. Every ship in Skyline ready to move at a moment's notice. As the peace day approached, the atmosphere on Earth was strange, bright on the surface, tense underneath. The people were excited yet uneasy, like animals before a storm. The leaders spoke about hope and future. The soldiers spoke about readiness. And the stars above felt closer than ever, yet colder than they'd ever been. In one of the secret observation centers, a young officer looked at the star map showing the location of the Peace Summit. He zoomed in slowly, studying the glowing dots that represented human ships among hundreds of alien ones. He whispered to himself, "We might be walking into a trap." No one heard him, but that thought echoed in the minds of many. And yet humanity moved forward. They had been through too much darkness to fear the light, even if it was false light, even if the peace was only an illusion, because humans, for all their flaws, had one rare thing the galaxy could never fully understand: the ability to hope, even when hope might kill them. As the Peace Fleet drifted closer to the galactic station, the commander on board gave a final coded message back to Earth. "We are entering the station. Keep the line open." That was the last clear transmission received before the summit began. Back on Earth, as the blue planet turned under the sunlight, no one could see the silent storm that was waiting in the stars. And so it began. The day when peace would be tested, and when the galaxy would learn the hardest truth about humanity: they might come in peace, but they are never truly unarmed. The human peace fleet was now inside the Council's star zone. On the outside, everything looked calm. Ships gliding smoothly, beautiful lights from distant suns glowing across their silver hulls. But inside the ships, the air felt heavy. Something about this journey didn't feel like peace. It felt like being watched. The delegates, dressed in fine uniforms, spent their days in meetings, studying the Council's rules, preparing speeches. They spoke about friendship, trade, and the future. Cameras recorded everything for the people back home. Smiles were practiced. Words were chosen carefully. Yet behind those calm faces, Every human on that ship carried a quiet unease they couldn't explain. On Earth, Mission Control tracked the fleet's progress closely. Every few hours they received updates, short messages confirming that all systems were normal. But engineers noticed that the communication signals were getting weaker, slower, and strangely distorted. One of them said softly, "It feels like someone is listening in." The others laughed nervously, trying not to believe it. Then, a week before the Peace Summit, something strange happened. A science satellite orbiting near the Council's border suddenly went offline. It was one of the newest models, built to survive anything. No sign of explosion, no system failure, it just vanished. When Earth asked the Council what had happened, their answer was simple: meteor activity. But the space around that region hadn't had any meteor showers in months. The data didn't match. Still, the diplomats told everyone to stay calm. "We cannot start peace by spreading fear," one of them said during a broadcast. The public believed them. The military did not. At the same time, in a secret moon base, a small group of analysts worked non-stop decoding alien signals. Their screens flashed with strange symbols and distorted patterns. Most of it was meaningless noise, but one day a repeating code began to appear. The same message was being transmitted from several Council stations again and again. The translation program could only pick up one word: containment. That word sent chills down the team's spines. Containment? What did they mean? Containment of what or who? The message was sent to Earth's Central Command, but officials buried it quietly. They didn't want to cause panic before the summit. But in the hidden corners of the military network, rumors spread fast. People started whispering that maybe the peace wasn't meant to include freedom. Maybe humanity was being contained. Back on the peace fleet, the humans tried to stay positive. They were treated kindly by the Council. The alien representatives smiled, spoke gently, and provided anything the humans asked for: food, rest, and information about the upcoming ceremony. Yet small details didn't fit. The corridors of the alien station were always guarded. The energy readings from the station were far higher than what should be needed for a simple meeting. Even the walls seemed alive, pulsing softly with strange light. A young engineer in the crew, who often stayed awake during the night shift, noticed something odd. Every few hours, small Council drones would fly around the human ship, scanning it quietly. When she asked what they were doing, the aliens replied it was for safety checks. But she knew a weapon scan when she saw one. Meanwhile, on Earth, strange interference began affecting global systems. Power surges hit communication satellites. Some believed it was solar activity, but those who understood signals knew better. It was the Council's network. They were expanding it near Earth's orbit. But why would they need to build such a large communication web near a planet they were about to make peace with? Inside the world government chambers, leaders started to argue. Some demanded the recall of the fleet until the situation was clearer. Others insisted that withdrawing now would make humanity look untrustworthy. "If we show fear, they'll see us as weak," one leader said firmly. The final decision was made. The fleet would continue as planned. The peace ceremony would happen, but not everyone agreed. Deep inside the defense headquarters, one of the senior commanders gathered his team. "If this is a trap," he said, "we can't go in blind." Quietly, he approved the activation of Iron Dawn, a secret backup plan. It was a defense system no one outside the military knew existed, designed to respond instantly if the fleet sent an emergency signal. In space, as the human ships neared the Council's Grand Station, they could finally see it in full view. It was enormous, glowing like a sun. Thousands of ships surrounded it, some diplomatic, some clearly armed. The structure itself looked beautiful, but the beauty felt unnatural, almost intimidating. The closer they got, the more they realized how small humanity still was. The lead ambassador spoke to his team through the internal radio. His voice was calm but carried tension underneath. "Remember why we came here," he said. "We represent all of Earth. No matter what happens, stay united." As the ships docked, the aliens greeted them with great ceremony. The Council members wore shimmering robes, their faces kind, their voices like music. They spoke about peace, progress, and unity. They even thanked humanity for showing trust. Cameras captured every moment. The footage was broadcast back to Earth, where billions watched with hope in their hearts. But what the cameras didn't show was the silence that followed once the ceremony ended. The human delegation was escorted to their quarters, a beautiful hall filled with alien art and golden light. Yet the guards at every door never left. The humans were guests, but it didn't feel like they could leave freely. That night, one of the diplomats tried to contact the ship's communication center, but the channel was blocked. Technical delay, the aliens explained politely, but when she asked to see the communication logs, they refused. A technician on the fleet ship noticed another odd detail. The council station had massive energy readings coming from deep below its surface, like reactors charging something. He quietly ran the data through his scanner and froze when he saw the results. The energy output was enough to power a planetary weapon. The next morning, when the human team met for a private breakfast, everyone could feel something wasn't right. The smiles were gone. The laughter felt forced. The translators whispered to each other that they had overheard alien guards mentioning the phrase, "final phase." The head of security leaned closer and said softly, "They're not planning peace. They're preparing something bigger." Meanwhile, the few humans stationed secretly near the council's border, miners, traders, scouts, began sending strange reports. Some said that council ships were gathering near key wormholes, forming patrol lines. Others claimed that a massive fleet was hidden behind the gas giant near the peace station. When these reports reached Earth, the information was again dismissed as rumor. "These people always imagine war," one official said on a broadcast, but not everyone dismissed it. In a quiet control room far below the surface of the United World Base, the defense analysts began preparing the network for activation. They didn't tell the politicians. They didn't even tell the public. But if anything happened, if even a single distress signal was received from the peace fleet, they were ready to respond. As the summit day came closer, the atmosphere inside the human fleet grew tense. The crew couldn't sleep. Some of them began writing messages to send home once the ceremony ended, just in case they didn't get another chance. Others stood near the observation windows looking out at the stars, wondering if this was the beginning of peace or the beginning of another war. The human captain sent one last encrypted message to Earth before the summit began. It was short, simple, and filled with unspoken worry. "We are here. Situation uncertain. Proceeding with caution." On Earth, that message reached the command room at midnight. The officers stared at it in silence. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, the senior officer said, "Keep all channels open. If anything happens, we respond." Up above, far beyond the moon, the stars glittered quietly, hiding secrets that no one could read. The peace fleet floated in the vast darkness, unaware that just outside the bright station, hundreds of council ships were forming new positions. The aliens kept smiling. The humans kept hoping. The world kept believing. But under all that hope, the truth waited like a shadow, ready to show itself. The day of the peace signing was only hours away now. Humanity stood at the edge of its greatest dream and its greatest danger. They didn't know it yet, but the peace they were about to sign wasn't peace at all. It was the first step into the trap the Council had been building for years, and somewhere deep in space, silent and unseen, a single human satellite blinked once, its light flashing a secret code, a warning that no one noticed in time. The great day finally arrived. The Peace Summit, the event that the whole galaxy had been waiting for, was about to begin. Every channel on Earth broadcasted it live. Billions of people were watching. Children in schools were told to stand and clap when the peace ceremony started. Families stayed up late to witness what was being called the birth of a new age. Far away on the Council's grand station, the human fleet was docked among thousands of alien ships. The structure shined like a sun made of glass and metal, orbiting the blue gas giant below. It looked calm and beautiful from a distance, but the closer the humans looked, the stranger it seemed. The walls hummed with hidden energy. Drones floated silently through the air. The hallways were lined with guards in golden armor. They smiled politely, but their hands never left their weapons. The humans told themselves it was only security protocol, but deep inside, they knew it was more than that. As the delegation walked toward the central chamber, one of the officers quietly recorded energy readings on a small handheld device. The numbers made no sense. There was too much power flowing beneath the floor. It was enough to run an entire city. He slipped the device back into his pocket, pretending everything was fine. The council chamber was enormous, filled with light and sound. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in rows that rose like waves around the room. At the center was a raised platform where the peace agreement would be signed. The humans took their seats while cameras floated above them, streaming the moment across the galaxy. The Council's high speaker, a tall and graceful figure with a calm voice, welcomed humanity with warm words. "We are honored," the speaker said, "to finally welcome the children of Earth into the great family of the stars." The room filled with applause. But behind those claps there was something cold in the air, something that didn't belong in a place of peace. The human ambassador smiled for the cameras, but his eyes kept scanning the hall. Every movement, every flicker of light, every shadow seemed important. The council members were too calm, too sure. It felt less like a meeting between equals and more like a ceremony that had already been decided. Hours passed. Speeches were made, promises exchanged, and finally, the high speaker held up the peace agreement for all to see. The crowd cheered. It was a thick document made of crystal pages that glowed with alien script. "This agreement," the speaker said, "marks the beginning of harmony between our species." But as the humans leaned closer to read the translation on their display screens, something strange appeared. The words didn't match what had been promised before. One section, written in a complex alien dialect, was mistranslated. Where it was supposed to say shared sovereignty, it now said subordination under guidance. The translator frowned, checked again, and whispered to the ambassador, "Sir, that word doesn't mean cooperation. It means control." The ambassador froze. He asked for confirmation. The translator's hands shook. "It says Earth will function under council regulation. We would lose independence." The ambassador's heart pounded. He looked around the room. Every alien pair of eyes seemed to be watching him, waiting. The council had planned this. The peace agreement wasn't an alliance, it was a surrender. He leaned back and whispered into his communicator, sending a coded signal to his security team. "Double-check the data. Something's wrong." At the same time, back on Earth, the military command center received a partial message from the fleet. It was heavily scrambled, but carried a single line that sent chills through the room. "The terms have changed. It's not peace. Be ready." The commanders looked at each other in silence. Then, without hesitation, one of them activated the Iron Dawn standby sequence. It was still only a precaution, but everyone knew what it meant. Earth was preparing for a fight. Back on the council station, tension was rising fast. The aliens noticed the humans whispering among themselves. The high speaker's voice became colder. "Is something wrong, representatives of Earth?" The ambassador forced a polite smile. "We only wish to clarify a few translations before we proceed," he said calmly. The speaker nodded slowly. "Of course, but you will find the meanings are as intended. Peace requires obedience as much as trust." Those words made the human's blood run cold. The speaker wasn't even hiding it anymore. The ambassador tapped the communicator on his wrist 3 times, sending a silent distress pulse back to Earth. The signal was small, hidden among the regular communication feed, but it was enough. The humans in the audience began to realize that something was very wrong. The alien guards had started to surround the chamber quietly, forming a circle around the human delegation. Their smiles were gone now. Their eyes glowed faintly with energy. Inside the human ship docked at the station, the security officers received the coded signal. "Iron signal confirmed," the captain said firmly. "Activate defense mode." The crew locked down the ship, cut external communication, and started scanning the station's systems. Within seconds, they detected dozens of hidden turrets emerging from the station's walls. It was clear. The peace summit was never meant to end peacefully. It was a trap designed to disarm humanity under the guise of diplomacy. Back in the council chamber, the high speaker stood tall. "Humanity," the speaker declared, "you have been given the greatest honor to serve under the protection of the council. From this day forward, your planet and its people will contribute to the unity of the stars. Sign and join us in peace." The ambassador didn't move. The room went silent. Everyone waited. Then, with a calm but steady voice, he said, "We came here for peace, not to surrender our freedom." The alien guards took a step forward. The cameras stopped broadcasting. Somewhere deep in the station, a power surge rumbled through the floor. The humans exchanged quick glances. They all understood what was happening now. The ambassador pressed his communicator one last time and said quietly, Send the pulse, far away near Mars's orbit. Earth's hidden defense fleet received the signal. The Iron Dawn protocol came to life. Massive ships uncloaked, revealing their dark metallic armor against the stars. They had been hiding for weeks, pretending to be cargo vessels. Now they moved into position. On the council station, chaos began. The alien guards raised their weapons, but the humans were faster. Security officers pulled small energy shields from their belts, protecting the diplomats as they retreated toward the exit. Explosions shook the outer docks as the human fleet broke free from the station's hold. The council forces tried to jam their signals, but Earth's ships were already responding. From the dark side of the gas giant, human warships appeared, silent, disciplined, and ready. In the council chamber, the High Speaker's calm voice echoed through the noise. "You cannot win. You are surrounded." The ambassador stood firm. "Maybe," he said. "But we came prepared." As the first human missiles streaked through space, lighting up the darkness, the council realized that humanity had never truly trusted them. They had come smiling but armed. The peace station shook under the impact. Alien fleets rushed in to defend it, but the humans' smaller ships were faster. They darted between the massive vessels using clever tactics and unexpected maneuvers. They fought like no other species ever had. Unpredictable, emotional, fearless. On Earth, people watched in shock as the news feeds filled with static. The last clear broadcast was a single sentence from the ambassador before the connection was lost. It was never peace. Tell the world to be ready. The fighting continued across the station. The humans weren't trying to conquer. They were trying to escape. Every move was about survival. Every decision about protecting the truth. Finally, after hours of chaos, the human fleet managed to break free from the council's trap. They regrouped near the gas giant, sending a final encrypted message to Earth. The message was simple. "We survived the trap. Prepare for the next move." Back on the council station, smoke filled the air. The High Speaker watched the human ships vanish into the distance. The aliens around the chamber whispered in disbelief. They had underestimated Earth. They had expected fear, weakness, and surrender. What they saw instead was defiance, unity, and the courage of a species that refused to bow. And so, the galaxy changed that day. The peace agreement was destroyed before it was ever signed. The trap had failed, but the war of truth had only just begun, because humanity had just taught the Council one lesson they would never forget. Even when humans come in peace, they never come unprepared. The alarms of the Council's grand station echoed like thunder across the metal halls. Red lights flashed, voices shouted in a dozen alien languages, and the sound of rushing feet filled the air. What was supposed to be the biggest peace ceremony in galactic history had turned into chaos in a matter of minutes. The trap had been triggered. When the Council guards surrounded the human delegation, everything changed. The smiles disappeared, the friendly tone vanished, and the truth finally revealed itself. The humans weren't guests anymore, they were prisoners in waiting. The High Speaker's calm voice had turned cold. "You should be honored," the Speaker said. "Few species are given the chance to serve the Council, but your resistance will only cause pain." The ambassador stood silently. Around him, human security officers slowly reached for their hidden shields and defense tools, pretending to adjust their uniforms. The aliens didn't notice yet, and then the first move came from the humans. One of the guards raised his plasma rifle toward the ambassador, but before he could fire, a human officer slammed an energy shield to the ground, releasing a shockwave that pushed the guards back. In that instant, everything exploded into motion. Bright flashes lit the chamber. Smoke filled the air. The alien guards shouted commands while the humans fought to protect their delegation. The ambassador shouted over the noise, "Activate the signal." "Send it now." A technician pressed the coded beacon on his wrist. The hidden pulse transmitted instantly through space, a small signal carrying a huge message. Far away, near Mars's orbit, Earth's hidden fleet received the transmission. In seconds, the Iron Dawn protocol came alive. Across the silent darkness of space, hundreds of human ships uncloaked. They had been disguised as mining vessels, research units, and cargo haulers, waiting quietly for this exact moment. Now their weapons powered up, glowing in the cold light of distant stars. Inside the Council's command center, alien officers panicked as hundreds of red dots suddenly appeared on their radar screens. "What is this?" one shouted. "They brought an army." The high speaker turned pale. Impossible, the speaker whispered. Humans are not capable of such deception. But they were. The human fleet moved fast, faster than the Council expected. Their ships weren't as big or advanced, but they were unpredictable. They changed formations mid-flight, dodged plasma blasts, and struck where the enemy least expected. The first wave of Council defense ships was caught completely off guard. Inside the station, the humans fought their way through the corridors. Their goal wasn't destruction, it was survival. They needed to reach their ships before the station locked down. The walls shook from distant explosions. The humans ran using small portable shields to block laser fire. Alien guards chased them, shouting orders. Sparks flew as the air filled with energy bolts. One officer shouted, "We need to reach Dock Bay 4. Another replied, "Half the route is blocked." They didn't stop. They took side paths, climbed through maintenance tunnels, and crawled through smoke-filled vents. Every heartbeat felt like an hour. Outside, space itself had become a battlefield. Human ships launched countermeasures, creating blinding bursts of light to confuse enemy scanners. The Council's fleet was powerful, but their tactics were old. The humans fought like improvisers, quick, creative, and unpredictable. In one corner of the battle, 3 small human fighters tricked a massive alien warship into firing at its own ally. It exploded in a flash so bright it lit the entire gas giant below. The humans on the station felt the impact as a deep rumble through the floor. One of them whispered, "That's ours. They're fighting for us." Back on Earth, the command center received the full transmission. The truth was finally clear. The peace had been a setup. Every leader, every general, every person watching the live broadcast knew what it meant. The Council had tried to enslave humanity. The world's military networks lit up instantly. Orders were given. Fleets were repositioned. Defenses on Earth were activated. The blue planet that had hoped for peace was now preparing for war. But on the station, the human delegation's survival was still uncertain. The ambassadors' group reached Dock Bay 4 only to find the doors sealed. The security system was under alien control. They had nowhere to go. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from both ends of the corridor. They were trapped. The ambassador looked at his team, his voice steady even in fear. "If they capture us, the truth dies here. We hold this position until the signal clears." The humans formed a circle, shields raised. The aliens arrived moments later. Rows of armored guards, weapons glowing. "Surrender," one of them shouted. The ambassador took a deep breath. "We came for peace," he said quietly. "But we will leave with freedom." And with that, the fight began again. The humans fought fiercely. They used the narrow corridor to their advantage, forcing the aliens to come one by one. Sparks flew as shields clashed and blasts hit the metal walls. Then from the ceiling, a loud grinding sound began. The humans looked up and saw the metal hatch slowly opening. A rope dropped down. It was their rescue team. The security unit from the main human ship had broken through the docking barrier and created an opening directly above the corridor. "Come on!" a voice shouted through the smoke. "We've got you covered." One by one, the humans climbed the rope, helping each other up. The ambassador was the last to go. Before leaving, he looked down the corridor filled with smoke and fallen guards. He didn't feel victory. He felt sadness. Peace had been possible, but greed had destroyed it. Moments later, they were aboard their ship. The engines roared to life and the ship tore away from the station. Alien ships chased them, but Earth's fleet formed a protective wall around their path. The view outside was breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. Hundreds of ships locked in combat, explosions painting the darkness with light. It looked like fireworks, but every spark meant lives lost. "Earth Fleet, this is the delegation vessel." The ambassador's voice came through the radio. "We're clear. Begin retreat plan." On the command ship, the human fleet commander nodded. "Copy that. All ships cover formation Delta. Protect the convoy." The human ships began to retreat slowly, firing in short bursts to keep the enemy back. They didn't come to conquer. They just wanted to get out alive and tell the galaxy the truth. The Council's voice crackled over open channels. "Humans, you are making a mistake. You cannot survive this rebellion." The ambassador replied calmly, "We survived worse, and now the galaxy will know what you've done." The alien commander's voice turned harsh. "You are alone in this war." "Maybe," the ambassador said, "but we still have something you don't. Freedom." Those words spread across the open channels. Every ship, human and alien, heard them, and for a moment, even in the middle of chaos, silence filled the stars. Finally, the human fleet broke free from the Council's blockade and jumped into hyperspace. The bright streaks of light swallowed their ships, leaving the battlefield behind. The Council station burned quietly in the distance, its golden lights dimming against the blue glow of the planet below. Inside the control chamber, the high speaker watched the retreating humans on the holographic display. "They escaped," one officer said nervously. The speaker's voice was cold. "No, they've only delayed their end." But deep down, even the speaker knew the truth. This was no longer about control. The Council had just awakened something they didn't understand. Humanity's defiance had shaken the galaxy. Far across space, the human fleet finally slowed near a quiet star system to regroup. The ambassador looked out at the stars, his reflection faint on the glass. Everyone on board was exhausted but alive. They sent a final message to Earth. The trap failed. The truth is out. Humanity stands free. Back on Earth, when that message arrived, people poured into the streets. There were no celebrations, no cheers, just quiet relief. The people now understood that peace was never free. It had to be protected. The blue planet continued to turn under the golden sunlight stronger than before. The Council had tried to deceive them, but instead, they had united them. The humans knew the fight wasn't over. The Council would not forget what happened, but they also knew one thing for sure: the galaxy would never see them the same way again. Because on that day, in the heart of enemy territory, humanity had proved that they could be peaceful, but never powerless. And as the stars stretched before them, their ships drifting quietly through the endless dark, one thought echoed through every human heart. We wanted peace, but if peace demands change, we will choose freedom every time. The human fleet drifted quietly through the empty stretch of space after escaping the Council's ambush. Every ship carried damage. Some had holes in their outer hulls. Others had lost engines or communication arrays. Inside, crews worked without rest, patching systems, helping the wounded, and trying to contact Earth again. The silence of space felt heavy. After hours of non-stop fighting and running, everyone was tired. The stars outside looked calm, but everyone knew it was only a short peace, a fragile moment before the storm that would come next. The ambassador sat near the observation deck, looking out into the endless dark. His uniform was torn, his face pale, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. Around him, officers spoke in low voices, trying to calculate how long they could survive with limited supplies. "Fuel reserves at 30%, one officer said. "Some of our ships can't travel much farther." Another added, "Communications are unstable." "The Council jammed half our frequencies." The ambassador nodded slowly. "Then we make do with what we have. We've come too far to stop now." At that moment, a soft chime sounded. A transmission from Earth had finally come through. The crew gathered around as the image flickered to life. A representative from Earth Command appeared on the screen. "We received your signal," she said. "The Council's betrayal is confirmed. The world has seen the footage. Every nation stands behind you." A quiet wave of relief went through the room. After all the chaos and betrayal, those words meant everything. Humanity wasn't alone anymore, but the representative's expression grew serious. "The Council is denying everything," she continued. "They're claiming the humans attacked first. They've already sent messages to other species calling you terrorists." The ambassador frowned. "So they're trying to twist the story." "Yes," she replied. "And worse, they've begun moving fleets toward Earth's borders. They want to show power before we can defend ourselves." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Council wasn't wasting time. Even after failing to trap the delegation, they still planned to crush humanity, not with diplomacy, but with fear. The ambassador leaned forward. "How long do we have before they arrive?" "Maybe a few weeks," she answered. "We're building defenses, but their ships outnumber ours 10-1. The screen went dark, leaving the room silent again. The ambassador turned to his officers. "They want to erase us before the truth spreads," he said quietly. "But we won't let them. The galaxy needs to hear our side before it's too late." He looked around at his tired crew. "If we can send the full recording of what happened to every neutral world, the Council's lies will fall apart. But we'll need a signal tower, one strong enough to reach all systems." An engineer spoke up. "There's an abandoned relay station near the Vega Belt. It's old but powerful. If we can get there and repair it, the broadcast might reach the entire galaxy. The ambassador nodded. Then that's our next mission. Prepare the fleet. The journey to the Vega Belt was long and dangerous. The ships moved slowly, avoiding known Council patrol routes. Sometimes they had to hide behind asteroid fields, cutting power to stay invisible. Inside the ships, everyone worked silently, knowing any mistake could expose them. The air felt tense like a string stretched too tight. But even in that silence, a quiet unity grew. Humans from different nations, backgrounds, and professions were now one team. They had no flag up there, only a shared goal, survival and truth. After days of travel, they finally saw it, the Vega Relay, floating like a ghost in the dark. It was a massive structure, half broken, covered in space dust and old metal scars. The place looked dead, but it still had power deep within its core. The fleet stopped nearby. Repair teams suited up and boarded the station. The corridors inside were cold and silent. Lights flickered weakly. The sound of footsteps echoed through the emptiness. This place hasn't seen life in decades, one technician whispered. They started repairing the systems. Cables were reconnected, generators reactivated, and communication dishes realigned. Hours passed. Slowly, the old station came back to life, glowing like a faint candle in the dark. Then, just as they prepared the transmission, one of the radar officers shouted, "Incoming ships!" Multiple signatures approaching fast. Everyone froze. The council had found them. How many? The ambassador asked. At least 20 warships, and they'll be here in minutes. The crew exchanged anxious looks. They were outnumbered again, but retreat wasn't an option this time. The truth had to go out, no matter what. The ambassador's voice was calm but firm. We finished the broadcast. That's an order. Half the crew stayed on the station to complete the signal upload. The rest went back to their ships to form a defense line. Engines roared to life, weapons powered up, and shields shimmered like blue fire around each ship. Through the viewports, they saw the Council fleet emerge from hyperspace, massive ships with glowing emblems, shining like steel beasts. The first blast hit moments later, shaking the relay station. The humans fired back even though their weapons were smaller. The black of space turned into a storm of light and fire. The humans fought with everything they had. Each second mattered. Every moment bought time for the signal team to finish their work. Inside the relay control room, technicians rushed between consoles. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded. One shouted, "Main transmitter is overheating! Keep it online!" Another yelled back, "We're almost done." The ambassador stayed beside them, watching the progress bar climb. 90%, 95, 98. Then the room shook violently as an explosion tore through one side of the station. Metal panels flew off, alarms screamed. The lights flickered and went out. "Damage in the outer hull," a crew member shouted. "We've lost the stabilizers." The ambassador grabbed a support rail to steady himself.
"Can we finish the upload?"
"Almost, just a few more seconds." Outside, human ships were being hit one after another. Some were destroyed completely, turning into burning fragments. But even as they fell, they kept transmitting protective codes, ensuring the signal stayed open. Finally, the technician turned around, his voice shaking with emotion. Transmission complete. The entire station echoed with cheers even among the chaos. The truth had been sent. Every neutral world, every small colony, and every trader ship across the galaxy would soon receive the real footage. The Council's betrayal caught on record. But their victory came at a cost. The Council's fleet wasn't stopping. Their biggest warship was charging its main weapon, aiming directly at the relay. "We need to evacuate," shouted one of the officers. The ambassador looked at the burning screens, at the ships fighting outside, and at his exhausted crew. "No," he said softly. "If we leave now, they'll destroy the station before the signal spreads completely. Someone has to stay and protect it." The crew fell silent. They knew what that meant. Finally, one officer said, "Then we stay with you." The ambassador shook his head. "You've done enough. Get to the shuttles." "That's an order." Reluctantly, they obeyed. The shuttles launched one by one, escaping into the battle outside. The ambassador stayed behind, watching the stars flicker through the cracked window. The Council's warship was now charging its final shot. He took a deep breath and opened the station's intercom. His voice, calm and steady, echoed through every remaining human ship. "To all who can hear me," he said, "the message is sent. The galaxy will know the truth. No matter what happens now, remember, peace is never built on lies. Stand proud. Stand free. The warship fired. A bright beam of energy cut through space, striking the relay station directly. The explosion was massive, a silent bloom of light that spread like a sunrise across the stars. For a few seconds, everything was white. Then, slowly, the light faded, and only fragments of the station remained, glowing like fireflies in the dark. On the surviving human ships, the crew watched in silence. Many had tears in their eyes, but also a strange sense of pride. The message had gone out. Their mission was complete. Back on Earth, a few hours later, thousands of screens across the world came alive with the broadcast. It showed everything. The Council's deceit, the moment the peace trap was revealed, the humans fighting for survival. People everywhere stopped what they were doing to watch. Markets, schools, streets, the entire planet froze in silence. For the first time, the galaxy's citizens saw the truth the Council had tried to hide. And across the stars, in hundreds of alien worlds, others watched too. Some were shocked, some were angry, and some unquietly eyed began to question the Council's rule. The humans had paid a heavy price, but they had done what no other species dared. They had spoken truth to power. Their ships drifted quietly through the stars now, wounded but alive. The surviving crew didn't see themselves as heroes. They just knew they had done what was right. One of them looked out at the fading light of the destroyed relay and said softly, "He did it." "The whole galaxy will know now," another replied. "He gave us a future." The stars glimmered around them like silent witnesses, carrying their light across the universe, carrying the truth with it. Humanity had lost a station, but gained something far greater. A voice that could never again be silenced, and far away, somewhere deep in Council space, the leaders watched the broadcast too. Their faces turned pale as the truth played across every screen. They had set the trap. But the trap had turned against them, because when humans came for peace, they came armed and not just. The galaxy wasn't the same anymore. After the transmission from the destroyed relay station spread, every planet that had once trusted the Galactic Council was now asking questions. The perfect image the Council had built for centuries began to crack, like glass under pressure. News feeds across alien worlds replayed the footage again and again. The moment the peace meeting turned into a trap, the humans fighting to escape, and finally, the brave sacrifice of the ambassador who stayed behind so the truth could spread. People everywhere whispered the same thing. The humans were right. But for the Council, that truth was dangerous. It threatened everything they had built, their power, their control, and their carefully managed image of being protectors of peace. In the heart of Council space, behind walls of silver and gold, the High Speaker called an emergency meeting. The Grand Chamber was full of tension. Holographic screens floated in the air, showing the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Protests, rebellions, and speeches demanding justice for humanity filled every corner of their empire. "They've turned the galaxy against us," one council member shouted. "They've exposed our plan," another added. The High Speaker raised a hand for silence. The voice that once sounded calm and wise now carried a cold anger. "Humanity thinks they've won," the Speaker said. "But they are small. We will crush them before their lies spread any further." But even the Speaker knew it was already too late. The truth was out. Meanwhile, on Earth, the world had changed too. For the first time in centuries, every nation stood together. The oceans were full of repair ships, the skies full of cargo vessels carrying supplies for the fleet. People worked day and night rebuilding and preparing. Humanity wasn't preparing to attack. They were preparing to defend what they had earned, their right to exist freely. In the main command center, deep under a mountain, the surviving crew of the Vega mission returned home. Their ships were damaged, their uniforms worn, but their spirits unbroken. As they stepped out onto the landing deck, thousands of people cheered. They weren't just soldiers now, they were symbols. The galaxy had seen what humanity could endure. One of the officers looked up at the giant display screen showing dozens of other alien worlds. Messages had begun pouring in from different planets, some small, some powerful. Many offered support. A few even offered sanctuary. One message came from an alien leader whose people had suffered under council rule for years. "Your courage has awakened us," the message said. "If the council attacks Earth, they will not face you alone. The humans stared at the screen, speechless. For the first time in their history, they weren't standing alone in the galaxy. The ambassador's sacrifice had done more than send a message. It had united species who never dared to speak before. But peace was still far away. The Council fleets were on the move again. Massive ships, dark and silent, filled the edges of human space. Their weapons were charged. Their orders were clear: to destroy humanity before their influence spread any further. Every telescope on Earth picked up the incoming armada. People could see them in the night sky like distant stars growing brighter. Panic spread across cities, but so did determination. In space, humanity's fleet gathered once again, battered but rebuilt. The old mining ships were now armored with metal plates. Cargo vessels had been turned into weapon carriers. Even civilian ships volunteered to help with transport and supplies. It wasn't a grand army, but it was united, and that made it powerful. The fleet commander stood before a vast screen showing the approaching enemy. "They're here," he said quietly. The Earth's defense systems came online. Giant orbital platforms glowed like rings of light. Satellites adjusted their positions, creating a network around the planet. The humans knew this battle wasn't about victory. It was about survival and proving one last time that freedom could not be taken away. As the Council fleet entered the solar system, their ships spread out, covering the stars with a dark shadow. The lead warship broadcasted a message in every known language: "Earth, surrender now. Your resistance ends today." For a few seconds there was silence. Then the reply came, calm, clear, and firm. "This is Earth. We do not surrender." That single sentence echoed across the galaxy, and then the battle began. The first blast from the Council fleet struck one of the human defense platforms, turning it into a ball of light. The shockwave rolled across the upper atmosphere. Human ships fired back, their smaller weapons flashing like sparks against the massive alien hulls. From the ground, people could see streaks of light cutting across the night sky. Not fireworks, but fire from a battle that would decide their future. In space, chaos unfolded. Human ships weaved between massive enemy cruisers, dodging plasma beams and returning fire. They used clever tricks: small drones to confuse sensors, fake energy signatures to draw the enemy away, and coordinated maneuvers that made it impossible for the Council to predict their movements. One human ship, heavily damaged, deliberately crashed into an enemy carrier, sacrificing itself to break the formation. Another fired its last missile at the perfect moment, disabling a cruiser's main cannon. Even as ships were destroyed, more human voices filled the comm channels. There was no fear, only focus, only courage. "Keep the line steady. Protect the transport vessels. Don't let them reach Earth's orbit." The battle raged for hours. Space turned into a storm of color, blue and red lights flashing across the void. Finally, when it seemed the Council's power would overwhelm them, something unexpected happened. Dozens of new ships appeared from hyperspace, alien ships, but not from the Council. They were from the worlds that had seen the broadcast, the ones inspired by humanity's courage. A voice came through the comms. "This is the Vega Coalition. Humanity, you are not alone." Cheers erupted across the human fleet. The newcomers joined the fight, their weapons targeting the Council's largest warships. Together, they pushed the invaders back. The galaxy was changing right before everyone's eyes. On the Council's main flagship, the High Speaker watched in disbelief as the combined human and alien forces began to gain ground. The Speaker slammed a fist on the console. "Impossible. They're primitives. How can they resist this?" But deep down, the Speaker understood. The humans were no longer fighting for territory or survival. They were fighting for something far stronger: the right to choose their own destiny. And that was a power no empire could ever destroy. The Council fleet began to fall apart. Their communication lines broke. Their ships turned and fled, retreating into the deep void. The battle was over. When the last Council ship disappeared into hyperspace, the stars were quiet again. The surviving human and allied ships floated in silence, their lights flickering weakly in the darkness. The battlefield was full of wreckage, pieces of metal, burned fragments, and fading energy trails. But among all that destruction, there was also hope. The commander of Earth's fleet sent a message across all channels. "The Council has been defeated. Earth stands free." On the planet below, people filled the streets crying and cheering. It wasn't a celebration of war. It was relief, gratitude, and pride. They had faced the most powerful empire in the galaxy and refused to kneel. In the days that followed, the Council's power crumbled. One by one, the species under its control declared independence. The galaxy that once feared the Council began to build a new kind of alliance, one based not on fear, but on respect, and at the center of it all was humanity, the small, stubborn species that refused to be broken. Years later, in a quiet memorial garden on Earth, a monument stood tall under the sunlight. It was a simple statue of the ambassador who had stayed behind at the Vega relay, his gaze turned toward the stars. At the base, a single line was carved. He spoke the truth and the galaxy listened. Children often came there to ask their parents what it meant. The parents would smile softly and say, "It means peace isn't given, it's earned." Above them, the sky was calm again. Ships from many worlds now visited Earth freely, traders, explorers, and friends. The Council was gone, but peace had returned, a peace built not on control but on trust. The humans had changed the galaxy forever, not because of their strength, but because of their courage. They had proved that even in the darkest times, truth could travel farther than any weapon. As the sun set and the stars began to shine, an old veteran from the Vega battle stood looking up at the sky. His eyes reflected the faint trails of ships leaving orbit. He whispered softly, "We came for peace. They gave us war, but in the end, we found both." He smiled faintly and turned away, leaving the stars behind and free at last, and somewhere out in the vast galaxy among the billions of stars, the light of humanity's courage continued to shine, a quiet reminder to every world that even the smallest voice, when it speaks the truth, can change the universe forever.